Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us. Uh, I'm John McCabe. I'm a judge here at DC Superior Court, and I'm joined this afternoon by two of my colleagues, Judges Carmen McLean and Judge Sherry Trafford, as well as by Joe Bahn, who's an attorney with Cozen O'Connor here in DC, who's done quite a bit of pro bono work. Um, we'd like to take this opportunity to talk to you a little bit about pro bono opportunities here in DC Superior Court. Uh, in this virtual world, it's always a little bit odd doing these things where we can't see any of you, but it's our understanding there's a lot of people out there who are listening and can hear us on our screens. I can see Judges McLean and Trafford and Ms. Bahn, but I also have never quite figured out after 2 years of virtual hearings exactly where I'm supposed to be looking so that I'm looking directly at people in the camera. But in any event, I don't mean to be rude if I occasionally turn away. It's to look at some notes I've taken to make sure I don't forget anything that I wanted to say during this meeting this afternoon. As many of you know, Judge Anita Josie Herring has been the chief judge of our court since September of 2020. And in addition to dealing with all the challenges of operating during the public health crisis, one of her priorities since becoming chief judge is to try to make sure that there are fewer pro se litigants in our court. There's just far too many people of low or moderate income who are in our court without legal representation. So one of the things that the chief judge did was created a committee called the Committee on Pro Bono and Affordable Counsel. Judge McLean and I are the co-chairs of that committee, and there's five other Judge Trafford and five other judges are on the committee, along with Paul Lee, who is the pro bono counsel at Steptoe firm here in DC, and Jody Feldman, who is the managing attorney for legal operations at the Legal Aid Society. We're also hopeful that sometime in the not too distant future, we'll have a full-time person at the court, what we're going to call a pro bono coordinator that will assist us in these efforts. So the things that we'd like to discuss during, what I know is a fairly short period of time with you all are a number of things. Why do we need more pro bono attorneys? What types of cases would pro bono attorneys be working on, and what type of work exactly would they be doing? Obviously, we want to talk about how you can get involved, how you can decide what kind of case is best for you. We're also going to talk about what our court is doing to try to ensure that it's accessible as possible for pro bono attorneys, and also try to talk a little bit about what we think are the benefits to you of doing pro bono work, and also, more importantly, the benefits to the people that you'll be representing, the members of our community, and just to the cause of justice in general. So starting with why we need more pro bono, as many of you know, DC is very fortunate to have quite a few outstanding legal service organizations. As a matter of fact, there's a link if you go to our website, www.dccourts.gov. There's a number of links that some of us may refer to today that you can click on later. But one of the links is to a list of about 50 of the legal service organizations in the district. I'm just going to name a few that because they're so particularly active in DC Superior Court, and you're probably familiar with a lot of them: the Legal Aid Society, Neighborhood Legal Services, the Children's Law Center, Legal Counsel for the Elderly, Bread for the City, the DC Volunteer Lawyers Project, and as many of you know, the DC Bar Pro Bono Clinic itself is very active in conducting trainings for prospective pro bono attorneys. But even though there's many of these organizations and they do outstanding work, they just simply can't represent all of the low and moderate income people who need representation in our cases. So as you certainly know, and we all learned in law school, and criminal defendants are entitled to representation regardless of their financial situation. However, in many other areas of the court, including many civil cases, family court cases, domestic violence cases, the overwhelming majority of litigants are not represented. I've got some statistics that the DC Access to Justice Commission compiled in the last couple of years that really, show how big how urgent this issue is. here's some examples. A landlord-tenant court, there's cases where folks are facing eviction. 88% of those facing eviction are not represented. On the other hand, 95% of the landlords do have counsel. There's also a landlord-tenant court now that's fairly new in our court within the last few years, called a housing conditions calendar, where people are plaintiffs are the tenants who are seeking to make sure that the landlords keep their property habitable. 75% of those people are without counsel. In domestic violence cases, around 90% of victims who are seeking restraining orders are not represented. In child custody cases, around 90% of the litigants are pro se. And then in child support cases, 97% of the respondents are pro se. Now, there's many other areas of the court. That's not in any way an exhaustive list, but other areas where there's a really urgent need for legal assistance are cases where folks are facing foreclosure on their home that they own because they've fallen behind on their mortgage or their taxes. And so, when you think about how crucial and critical these issues are to the members of our community, I mean, maintaining one's home, whether it's a home you own or, where you're renting, avoiding being homeless, your financial security, physical security of someone who might be a victim of domestic violence, and also just a very crucial issue of how and by whom, your child is going to be raised in a child custody case. Now, many of you may not practice in some of those areas that I've been talking about, but we urge you to not be discouraged by that. There's outstanding programs that the DC Bar Pro Bono Clinic and many of these legal service organizations operate that will train you in these specific areas of the court. And I'm sure many of your colleagues would be able to tell you that even though they do antitrust work, they were also able to do a child custody case, for example, or a domestic violence case. So I just want to mention again on our website some of these links that talk a little bit more about how to decide what type of case works best for you. One of them is called "What are your pro bono goals?" Another one is called "How to get involved." And they also show you which legal services organizations provide training, and also those same organizations can also help you connect you with a prospective client. So I also just want to throw out before I let others give a presentation is that in a lot of these cases you won't necessarily have to spend an enormous amount of time, because we understand all of you are very busy and have a lot of pressures of private practice, and we're really committed to try to make things work as efficiently as possible. I think also, our court, like all courts, is converting a lot more hearings to virtual hearings, and we're hopeful, I think, that that'll also make it easier for people to not have quite as much waiting time for their cases. In these links, you'll see that there's some opportunities that have a very predictable short-term commitment, like same-day advice clinics, but others, if you're open to it and able to, provide for much more, long-term involved representation, like serving as a guardian ad litem for a child in a child custody case, which can be extremely rewarding work. So just again, to some of the kinds of things that you'd be able to do, you can work in a resource center providing same-day advice to litigants in family court or landlord-tenant cases. You can help a victim of domestic violence get a restraining order. You can help someone avoid becoming homeless by representing them in a foreclosure proceeding or an eviction proceeding, making sure that their apartment is habitable in a housing conditions case. And in a child custody case, you can obviously provide enormous help to a litigant, one of the parents, or representing the child as a guardian ad litem, helping the judge figure out what's best in a particular case. We obviously think there's many benefits to you as attorneys, getting experience dealing one-on-one with a client, which, many of us, even that are judges now, worked at firms in the past, and we know that doesn't always happen in law firm work, but you'll have opportunities to work one-on-one with clients. You can learn a new substantive area of the law, and also for many younger attorneys, you can gain valuable experience in a courtroom, including up to and including a full trial, where you're doing opening and closing statements, direct and cross-examination of witnesses, introducing exhibits, those kinds of things. But obviously, the most important thing that you'll be doing is you'll be helping the members of our community and really have an enormous impact on their lives. helping them maintain their homes, their financial stability, their personal safety, helping them, figure out the best way to raise their children. And so all of this contributes not only to, to your individual clients, but we think, to the general, sense and perception and the reality that justice is being served in our court. So thank you so much for all your attention. I want to, move on and let others present. Thank you for your interest. I'll turn it over to Judge Trafford at this point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Judge McCabe. My name is Sherry Trafford. I'm a magistrate judge at the Superior Court, and I preside over hearings in many of our high volume courtrooms. I'm really thrilled to see, I think we have about 75 people who are logged in as participants for this webinar or panel discussion. And I am going to not try to take time with topics that other panelists are going to talk about, but I do want to also echo Judge McCabe's note that we really need you here, and you are here, I assume, because you have some interest in doing pro bono work, and I'm just going to encourage you to not let that momentum stall. You've taken the first step, which is participating in this conversation, and I'm going to explain to you some of the ways that the court is trying to make the pro bono experience less threatening and something that you can feel good about from the court's perspective. I do want to note that we always appreciate seeing attorneys in our courtrooms. As I said, I preside over many of the high volume courtrooms, or I have in my time at the court. And I can tell you that we love to see attorneys in the courtroom. Your clients in these cases where you may be appointed or agree to represent someone are always going to know the facts of their life better than you. But don't let that intimidate you. You have skills as an attorney, you've gone to law school, you at least know what these processes are all about. You understand the role of the attorney, the adversarial system that we have, the fact that the judge needs to hear from both parties in a case in order to make a good decision. And so we really appreciate when there is an attorney who can provide us a voice for someone who otherwise may be frightened to speak up or unable to figure out the best way to get information to the court. We, recognizing how valuable pro bono attorneys are to the court, we have undertaken efforts to make this an enjoyable experience for pro bono attorneys. And I don't want to just say enjoyable, like this is all fun and games. We want to make it a valuable experience for you. And not intimidating, as I indicated. The Chief Judge has really made this a priority, and under the leadership of Judges McCabe and McLean, this committee has made some good efforts to try to enhance the pro bono experience at DC Superior Court. And I want to follow up with some specific details about what we've done. Some of our efforts are aided by COVID. There are practical considerations and ways that the court has been able to schedule matters so that the experience of a pro bono attorney does not involve waiting for hours on end for a case to be called in one of these high volume courtrooms like the landlord-tenant courtroom. We do now generally across the court have staggered calendars where hearings have a set start time and there are only a certain number of hearings scheduled each hour. And for the most part, many of our high volume calendars are going to be conducting the initial proceedings, pretrial proceedings virtually. So you can log in from your office or from whatever location you choose. You're not going to be sitting in a big courtroom with hundreds of other people waiting for your case to be called for over an hour. And that's a benefit to you, because, and I can tell you it's a benefit to the judges as well. We don't feel the pressure of many people staring at us, waiting for their case to be called, getting more and more frustrated. Gives you time to be able to participate meaningfully. The other thing is that we have conducted some judicial training to allow judges to learn how to make the experience less intimidating for pro bono attorneys. We recognize that this is a time commitment on your part. Also, that you may be in a practice area that is different from your usual practice area. I'm going to let you in on a little secret, which may not be that much of a secret, but judges get assigned to preside over calendars on an annual basis. And if we're lucky, we might get to preside over the same type of cases year after year and develop some what we might consider expertise. But we learn the subject matter when we are assigned to preside over a calendar. And if we can do it, you can do it. And so I really encourage you to keep in mind the fact that we are engaging in this judicial training to allow judges to learn how to not make this an experience where pro bono attorneys may feel intimidated and even criticized for not being subject matter experts in an area where sometimes they may be picking up a landlord tenant case, for instance, for the first time. They've never dealt with a landlord tenant issue. There are amazing pro bono coordinators available at the legal services providers who can give you guidance and assistance. I'm going to let them speak to that better than I can, but I know that there's a lot of support for the pro bono attorneys. The court also is engaging in efforts to make this an experience that is rewarding and valuable to you by allowing you to appear in front of judges who recognize the value of the work. That we Part of that training included assisting judges to know that there may be a need to adjust deadlines in cases, allow you to get up to speed, allow you to juggle commitments with your pro bono work in coordination with other work that you have to do that is not related to these pro bono cases. We are also encouraging judges to engage with the pro bono attorneys, recognize the work that has been done as the case concludes, express that appreciation, provide an opportunity for you to engage with the judges, to talk about your experience and allow the judge to share some of their appreciation with you for the work that is so valuable to the court. And finally, something else that Judge McCabe has mentioned already, we do have funding approved to hire a pro bono coordinator for the Superior Court and the Court of Appeals. We'll be sharing that position across the court. And that is not someone who will be providing training or supervision, of course. The court is not going to engage in that direct supervision of pro bono attorneys. But this person will be able to assist the court in connecting attorneys, let me say it this way, connecting litigants with pro bono attorneys and resources to provide them assistance. We often see people who inside of us, it's just crying out, this person needs an attorney. They so need an attorney. This pro bono coordinator will be someone who the judges within the court can contact to learn how they can refer someone to a pro bono attorney. That pro bono coordinator can assist with making those links with legal services providers as well as volunteer attorneys who may be able to provide assistance, and can also assist us in ongoing training for the judges and court staff in terms of how to assist in making the experience as valuable for the attorneys who are volunteering as we find that work is valuable to the court. So I'm going to wrap up there, and I know that the other panelists will add information as needed, and I'm happy to answer questions also when we come back around.
Hello, I'm Carmen McLean, and I have been a judge at the Superior Court for about just over 3 years. For my first 3 years, I was in domestic relations, and now I'm in probate and tax. And I was so honored to be asked to co-chair this committee with Judge McCabe because pro bono work is a particular passion of mine. I was at Jones Day for 18 years before coming to the court. And at one point, we ran some numbers, and I spent about 10% of my 10-15% of my career on pro bono work. And so I'm going to speak with you all about an area that I have seen both as a pro bono attorney and then also as a judge, and that is the dramatic difference that a lawyer can make in the case before the court. And so I'm going to give you two specific examples, one from when I was a pro bono attorney and then one from when I was a judge. These are real cases. I've just changed the names. First, I have Mr. Johnson. He was a father of four, also helping to raise a grandchild. He lived in a 4-bedroom apartment, and he lived there for almost 15 years. He was employed full-time, and he also spent a lot of time volunteering at a local community center. But he couldn't afford a house for his large family without being subsidized. And so he couldn't move. He didn't have the flexibility to do that. And there were a few subsidized apartments that were available for a family of that size. But there were many problems in his apartment. There were very severe leaks in multiple rooms from both upstairs apartment plumbing and also from exterior doors and windows. There was very severe mold that everyone believed was exasperating his son's asthma. There were regularly broken doors and glass in the common areas of the apartment building. Over the years, he did what he thought he could to get those remedied. He would speak to the landlord, speak to people. Eventually, he decided he had to withhold the payment of rent to get them to pay attention to what he needed to do. So he did so. He went to court. He made an agreement with the landlord's lawyer to pay the rent and to have problems fixed. He fulfilled his end of the agreement. They did not fulfill theirs. They continued what they had done in the past, which was either do nothing or sort of do facial improvements like painting over mold, but not address any of the underlying causes. So he withheld rent again a few months later when they hadn't done anything. This time his landlord said, hey, no, they sued him again, but then they said, don't worry, you don't need to go to court. We'll fix the problems. So he didn't go to court, and the landlord's lawyer got a default judgment against him. And so then he had nothing, no cure to the problems. Several months later, he withholds his rent again. At that point, he went to some of the nonprofit lawyers who are on site to provide same-day service to people who don't have lawyers. And his case ended up being referred out to me. I went to his apartment and I was appalled that this very kind man and his family had to live in these circumstances. And there were so many more housing code violations than he was even complaining about, and the problems ran deep. So I spent months negotiating with the landlord's attorney and in discovery, obtaining an expert on the mold, and just really documenting all of the problems so that I could get them before a judge. What ended up happening is I reached an agreement with the landlord to give him a new apartment, but that apartment had to be renovated first because it was also in very poor repair. And I put the agreement in writing. I included penalties in the agreement if they did not make the necessary improvements and have the apartment ready by a certain time. Everything took so long, and the penalties continued to accrue. And by the time he moved into a brand new renovated apartment, he was able to live there for free for 4 years, and he got a cash payment of $12,000. And so the only difference in these cases is that he had a lawyer. And I had not practiced in landlord tenant since I was a law school student in a clinic. So I had no expertise or background, just, the ability to objectively look at things, document things, seek discovery, negotiate. It leveled the playing field, and it made an incredible difference in his life. Now, turning to my time as a judge, Miss White came before me my first year as a judge. She had previously consented to her mother, Miss Campbell, having custody of her children. But she wanted the custody back, and she had a lawyer at that time, but her mother, Miss Campbell, did not. But Miss Campbell raised questions about Miss White's mental health and how it impacted the children. Miss White was presenting well, and she denied having mental health issues, and there were no medical records provided to me to be able to understand what her mental health diagnosis was. So I gave custody of the two children to Miss White, their mother. 5 months later, the children were removed from Miss White by Child and Family Services and placed with Miss Campbell, who then filed a motion to modify custody. Miss Campbell now had a lawyer who it was not a pro bono lawyer, but a nonprofit lawyer who also had pro bono assistance, who immediately sought Miss White's medical records, the records related to the Child and Family Services investigation, which all of which showed severe mental health problems, and that likely when she appeared before me, she was in a certain cycle of her mental health that allowed her to present well, and she had since decompensated. So at trial, Ms. Campbell's attorneys offered extensive evidence regarding Ms. White's bipolar disorder, her refusal to comply with prescribed medications, the severe impact on the minor children, and how well they were doing in Ms. Campbell's custody. So that allowed me to make a better decision for the children, and I gave Ms. Campbell custody. And so that's just an example of sometimes litigants don't understand how to get information before a judge, and then a judge cannot make a good decision. And a pro bono lawyer, whether or not they do so perfectly is irrelevant to me. I've had many a pro bono lawyer before me. As long as they are trying hard, it's going to make a dramatic improvement in my ability to make a decision and the results to those involved. But that said, we know that it's daunting to get involved. I still remember my first trial when I was about a second year. I did a very poor job, but I kept trying and I got better and I got better. I never stopped getting nervous, but I started having, I think, doing a much better job as a lawyer. But we want to make it easier for you. And so the court has a landing page, which my law clerk will put in the comments if you want to look it up. Otherwise, right now on the main page, the home page for the court, you can hit on pro bono and it'll take you there. And so we have two of the documents that Judge McCabe mentioned. One is sort of thinking about how you want to direct yourself into what type of pro bono work, whether you be focused on wanting to get litigation experience so you can develop your career skills and goals while you're doing pro bono work, or whether you want like a finite period of time. Like those are important things for you to consider so that you have a positive experience that meets not only your goals to serve the community, but also your personal goals that will keep you hopefully coming back again and again. And then all the information for the wonderful nonprofits who they understand the needs of the court, which was what we've learned in the time since this committee was formed. We are so lucky to have such amazing organizations in the district. And so all we're trying to do is direct you to the organization that will then be able to support you in your pro bono work. They'll provide training, they'll provide mentorship, they'll provide sample pleadings, just a lot of things to make this accessible to you. And as for to give you a little more idea what it's like to be a pro bono attorney at the court, we've invited Jo Bahn to be here and tell you about her experience, which has been in many different areas at Superior Court. And then when she's done, we will open it up to your questions. So feel free to put them in the chat, and we're happy to respond. Thank you.
Hey y'all, my name's Jo Bahn. I'm an attorney at Cozen O'Connor, and I'm excited to be with you all today to talk about some of my pro bono experience. I'll also drop my email in the chat in case you want to connect offline about this, because sometimes asking questions in the big group can be a little bit intimidating, and so know that this is a safe space, and even if it's still too intimidating, feel free to just send an email. I've been at Cozen for almost 6 months now, but before that I spent 4.5 years in the federal government. where I also did some pro bono projects. And just taking a quick peek at the participant list, if you're in the federal government, Laura Klein is on, and she is all things pro bono cheerleader, and it would serve you well to connect with her after this. There are some other folks that are attending today as well. Jody and Sylvia from DC Legal Aid. I saw Nancy Drain on, Christina Jackson from WCL. So know that the community here is full and supportive. And they want to make sure that, as Judge McLean said, it is as easy as possible for you to do this. Right now, in private practice, I have 4 pro bono cases going on. A veterans appeal, 1 Social Security case, and 2 record sealing cases from DC Legal Aid and from the National Veterans Legal Services Program. So there's a variety of places that you can get placements from. They take a variety of time, both in person, in court, just on brief documents, transactional. I've done it all. Everything from trying a divorce case that was supposed to be non-contested and pretty easy, that ended up being a 2-day hearing and had a pretty ordinary opposing counsel, we'll call it. That kind of helped me develop the lack of intimidating nature that sometimes legal proceedings can be. It's important to realize that pro bono is like a real launching point for you as an individual, but it gives you so much more for the client that you're working with. So know that a bunch of my first trial, my first cross-examination, my first motion for summary judgment that I wrote are all from pro bono cases, and that has served me well in both my federal government practice and at my law firm now. You are well encouraged to do this work. There are programs both in the federal government to allow you to have administrative time for a lot of agencies and hours credit at a lot of firms in the DC area. So I would encourage you again to do pro bono work, not only for the rewarding experience and the lots of firsts, but the impact that you're getting to provide to the community that you are a lawyer in generally. You never know what clients are going to have from the legal services providers that will teach you something new about your practice or about how you interact with your clients that you may work with and for in your regular practice. So the experience is well rewarding. I will also say that a lot of the improvements that have been talked about as far as the landlord and tenant approach to calling cases has been very helpful. Pre-pandemic, it would be like half a day and you would have to kind of hang out and then wait for your case to be called to then go back into a room to talk with opposing counsel to try and get a continuance to come back into court. And that's all been effectively eliminated by the changes that have been made in the court's rules. And so, they really are trying to make this easier because the need is so high. And that's already been talked about. Judge McCabe talked about the 88% of unrepresented tenants, but 95% represented landlords. So I'm going to stop talking because I could talk forever about cases and examples, but I would encourage you to ask questions in the chat and I will drop my email. And if there's anything else that I can hit on, please let me know.
All right, and we do have a question so far. It's about if the court intends to work with law schools to broaden clinical programs. And the way the question was phrased, I just want to parse a little bit. The court doesn't have any plans to create programs. We do have plans to be in contact with folks who are running clinical programs. And we actually already have, with Professor Cohn, we spoke with her a lot during the pandemic, and we're able to talk about what the court sees as a need. And then, for example, she created a clinical program to help address that need. And so I encourage you to reach out to me if you want to be involved on sooner rather than later in terms of expanding your clinical programs. You can just email Judge McLean Chambers at dcsc.gov. So I just want to see if we have any other questions. We did try and organize this to be very respectful to your time. We'll go ahead and bring in the rest of the committee now. Please give us a minute to do so. It has to be done individually. And we could not bring them all in at the beginning. It's a little weird to introduce them at the end. But for some reason, I still don't understand. Judges don't take lunch until 1. And so many of the committee members were in hearings or trials during the beginning of the presentation, but we appreciate that the larger community doesn't wait until 1, so we wanted to try and work more on your schedule.
Judge McLean, this is Judge Trafford. I wanted to note that we have talked about ways that we as the court think that we are making this a more, a better experience for pro bono attorneys. But I would suggest that in addition to questions in the chat, if you have suggestions for us as to things that would make this a more attractive option for you to pursue, I think we're open to trying to consider and respond to any suggestions that you might have. And you can either, you can drop those in the chat. I would love to hear, because we are always trying to improve the experience, and we depend on pro bono attorneys. So we want to try to make it a valuable experience for you.
Absolutely. 100% agree with that. And you're welcome to send it in the chat. You're welcome to email my chambers. If that's at all daunting, you also welcome to send them to Paul Lee. I've just volunteered. Paul Lee and Jody Feldman, who can anonymize them for the judges, if that would make you more comfortable. We don't need the feedback to be attributed to anyone. We want to do what we can. And the training that we've recently provided was at the judicial conference held in May. And so we spoke to literally all of the judges in Superior Court about the need for pro bono, and the need not just to recruit new pro bono lawyers, but the need for people to keep coming back. All right, so we have our amazing committee here with us. I think we're just missing one person who is in a murder trial today. So I'll go ahead and introduce. We have Judge Julie Becker, who has been at the court for about 5 years. She was formerly in domestic relations. She's in domestic relations again, but prior to that, she was at legal aid. We have Judge Tanya Jones-Bosner, who has been in a variety of assignments at the court. Judge Stephen Wellner, who I learned a lot from when during our overlap on domestic relations, and prior to that, he was a pro bono coordinator at his law firm. Judge Israel, who is a powerhouse in domestic relations, but while she is stern, she appreciates the need for pro bono lawyers to provide information for her while she's on the bench. We have Paul Lee, who Judge McCabe said is the pro bono lawyer for his firm, Steptoe, and Jody Feldman, who is at legal aid. And we have learned so much from Paul and Jody over the course of this committee, and they have shaped our work and educated us about the non-court perspective, and we're so grateful for them. Who can't be here today is Judge O'Coon, because he is in the murder trial. All right, so we thank you all for your attendance. We hope that each one of you will consider getting involved, and to the extent you've already been involved, you might consider expanding your involvement. I do have a couple more questions. Okay, so is the court going to look at programs like to provide same-day advice and maybe revive some of those opportunities? There are a number of same-day advice clinics that currently exist. I think what we can do is expand them, because really right now it's limited to the resources of the nonprofit organizations and the extent to which pro bono attorneys are able to be there. But we would love to expand them and reinvigorate some. And so certainly that is on our radar. Also, some of the opportunities that are provided in the handout on the website are volunteering at self-help centers at the court. There are 2 self-help centers at the court that people can currently readily volunteer at, and there are several others that we are working to make sure that they will be able to take volunteers. And that's a way that you can really sign on to a specific period of time if time is a constraint for you. The next question, how can a legal service provider update the types of cases for which they're seeking pro bono attorneys on this list? I will keep that question and follow up with the person that asked that question, because I think I would like a little bit more information, and I definitely want to create more centralized resources that can be updated, just like this question asks. Does the court recommend that lawyers in private practice to always work with legal service providers? If so, should junior associates reach out to their pro bono coordinators about opportunities they identify on the court's website? Great question. So there are some practitioners before the court. For example, there are a lot of family law practitioners, but when I was in domestic relations, you certainly don't need to work with a legal services organization. I mean, that's often where the cases get assigned out. However, if you want to just take cases in and of yourself, and you have that background and experience, I welcome you to email me, and we'll put you on a list, and I guarantee you we can assign cases directly out to you. But if you don't have any experience in a given area, I highly recommend that you go through a legal service organization, because they will provide you with so much information that will make it easier for you and less time consuming. But yes, you can absolutely reach out to the pro bono coordinator in your office to get approval for opportunities. And also, we are happy as judges, one or two or however many you want, to come present at your firm. And so if you want to reach out to your, and we've offered to the coordinators at the larger firms, but we're happy to speak to a group, to speak to any number of people, as would help meet the goal of providing access to justice for pro se litigants before the court. So feel free to reach out to me with those requests. And so that is all the questions that I have right now, unless I am, let me see. Okay. Yeah. All right. So thank you very much. For those of you who are already involved in pro bono, and to the many legal services organizations folks that I see on the call, thank you so much for your work. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We appreciate you so much, and we hope you'll continue your work at Superior Court. And we hope many more of you will get involved. Thank you for your time and spending it with us today.